it's like being back at camp when you're 13 or 14, and like who didn't love camp though, right, as a kid? And so I
Right.
think there's just
Right.
really this, that's part of it. You can have whatever kind of money or style of living or standard of living you have wherever you're coming from. It's just like you're going back to what was so fun when, like, something that you did as a kid and those bonds that you made. And so you kind of just put up with some of the inconveniences of like poor sleep quality and the like.
Welcome, welcome, and happy Saturday. This is the sixth installment of the Camino collaboration I recently did with Jeremiah from Camino Guide and Nadine from Nadine Walks, who actually is just returning from doing a part of the Camino in Portugal. So make sure you're following her channel for any updates she has there about what it's like to be on the Camino right now. But yeah, today we have some really, really we have a really, really hard hitting topic for you guys. We're going to be talking about bunk beds on the Camino de Santiago, top bunk, bottom bunk. What's the experience like? You know, a lot of people maybe have never slept in a bunk bed or haven't in decades. So we just share some fun stories, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Well, speaking of albergues, what is your feeling on bunk beds? I mean, I always prefer, and I think there were maybe only a handful I stayed in that didn't have bunk beds, but are you guys top or bottom, or is it, do you not care?
I think for me, I mean, I don't care too much. I've always tended to be more in the top bunk, and some of that it's, you know, I'm probably, you know, on the younger end of the Camino spectrum, and so it just, and age wise anyway, and it's just easier, I think, for me to climb up to the top bunk. If sometimes I've often been like placed there when I get to an albergue, but sometimes I'll just volunteer to take the top bunk, just, you know, leaving the bottom bunk open for someone who might have more trouble on a top bunk. Yeah, when I was a kid, I loved the top bunk. You know, if I didn't have bunk beds growing up, but, you know, we'd take a vacation somewhere in a cabin, and my sister and I always fought over the top bunk. So I still have a little bit of that from childhood, just kind of that thrill of getting to sleep on the top and you're above everything. But, you know, the bottom bunk is like convenient. You know, middle of the night bathroom breaks. I drink a lot of water on the Camino, drink a lot of wine at dinner.
Yeah.
It's, you know, a bit of a hassle when you're in the top bunk, but I would say for the most part, I'm totally fine sleeping on the top bunk. It's probably where I am most of the time. How about the two of you?
When I'm with students, I often, like, there's a rule that they have to save me a bottom bunk. Just, I mean, I have a little more influence but one of the reasons for that was at the time, I mean, at my heaviest, I was 320 pounds. And those beds, when you're climbing up on a bed and you're large, the whole thing is like shaking. Like, they're just not very well made for huge people to be climbing up there. Now that I've lost 70 pounds, like this past summer when I was on Camino, I didn't mind climbing up there. I'm still in good health. I'm young. I mean, fairly young. So I didn't mind climbing up there once I lost a little weight. It still shakes a lot, though, even at my weight that I am now. But it's not nearly as bad as when I was really big, and like the whole thing's like, you know. So, but yeah, when I'm with students, that's part of their responsibility is to find a bed and mark it for me.
I like that system.
Because I am a snorer. Usually they are putting me in the area where they do not want to be, so they can not put up with my snoring.
Funny you mentioned the bed shaking, because I tend toward the bottom bunk if I can. It's just for the convenience factor. And I'm like I don't know how, but I swear I have to repack my entire backpack every morning. And I can never do it at night because I'm always the last one in the room. So I'm like trying to make no noise, looking for like my pajamas and stuff like that. And so it's like a 30-minute process every morning. And I just find if I can sit on the bunk while I do my bag, that helps a lot. But I have been on bottom bunks where the whole thing shakes, like you said, even when somebody just turns over. And so if you have somebody that's a mover, your bed is shaking the entire night, and that's no fun at all.
Especially if they're large.
Yeah, I mean, even if they're not, these are some rickety bunks you get sometimes on the Camino. And I don't know if you guys stayed, there's an albergue somewhere in the Meseta. It's a place that has a pool. There's normal bunk beds, and then there's like an upper loft area that's connected by like chains or ropes to the ceiling, and
Ooh.
it's like a real rickety like
Wow.
rope ladder to get up there. So it's like, but the beds
Wow.
are single up there. So I stayed up there, and it was like, I'm somebody that has to go up to use a restroom sometimes in the middle of the night. And so I'm like climbing down this ladder at 3 a.m. And my lawyer brain is like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest liability I have seen on the whole Camino. But yeah, I mean, it is just funny because I'm somebody at home that I have a king size bed. I want to sleep like this. And so sometimes I'm scared with a top bunk that I'm going to do that and just roll right out. Luckily that hasn't happened yet, but it is, I love that. That's like one of my favorite things about this experience is how you can bring people from so many different walks of life, and to get that real albergue experience, you have to be like, okay, sleeping in a bunk bed that could fall over or you could fall out or whatever.
With people snoring underneath you, and the German man in the corner that didn't take a shower, and like
My favorite was the Italian man sleeping only in bikini briefs in an albergue in Fonsebadon where the bunk beds were pushed together. And I have a picture.
Yeah.
You know that one? I have a picture. Took a picture in the morning. Our pillows were like next to each other. I woke up. We were almost spooning, and he snored so loud. Oh my God. So that's my best one. That's probably my best albergue sleep story.
I haven't been in that albergue, but I was going to ask if either of the two of you had like experienced the two bunk beds together, so that you're essentially, unless you're with a buddy, you are like in a double bed with a stranger.
Yep.
Such a bizarre experience, but like you do it, right? Like you're so tired, you just hope, right, that like you can just knock yourself out and wake up in the morning. Have you also, last thing about bunk beds, maybe, have you seen the triple bunks yet?
No.
So that it's like not just bottom and top, but there's like a middle level too.
That's so like you have like this much space.
Yeah, the middle. I've like slept, I think on the Norte, I experienced a couple albergues like that, or like with the triple bunks. Yeah. I've always tried to like avoid that middle layer because like getting in it, it's a whole thing. It's a whole other thing. So keep your eye out. Any other pilgrims, on the Camino as you're walking, keep your eye out.
I'll be making a video about that for sure.
It's a real find if you can find a triple bunk on the Camino. It's like the treasure hunt, right?
I have heard that on the Caminos in France, bunk beds are way less common.
Yeah, that's true.
Was that your experience?
Yep, absolutely. So at least on the Chemin Le Puy, there were a couple places with bunks, but for the most part, it's just single beds. And they tend to, in the gîtes there tend to be more and smaller rooms, so that you might only be sharing a room with maybe 3 or 4 other people. So, and I know you can find those on some of the albergues, like on the Française. Those tend to be more the private albergues.
Right.
But on the there tend to be, most of the gîtes have like these smaller rooms and no bunk beds. So that's, for me, that was a plus. The Chemin for sure.
Yeah, I feel like some of these are we're going to have people like Googling like where the bunk beds are and how to avoid them. And also the one that I mean, there are plenty of places that have co-ed bathrooms. Some places didn't, but plenty of places do. But I did not stay anywhere that had just like open communal showering. I think the one in Ocebredo had that, but that was one of the places I got up there and I'm like, I will be sleeping in a private room tonight. And that was the best decision. But yeah, it's like being back at camp when you're 13 or 14, and like who didn't love camp though, right, as a kid? And so I think there's just really that's part of it. You can have whatever kind of money or style of living or standard of living you have wherever you're coming from. It's just like you're going back to what was so fun when, like, something that you did as a kid and those bonds that you made. And so you kind of just put up with some of the inconveniences of like poor sleep quality and the like.
Well, there you have it, folks. All you need to know about bunk beds along the Camino de Santiago. Hope you enjoyed that. Would love it if you could leave a comment below with maybe one of your funny stories about bunk beds. Are you top bunk, bottom bunk? Do you avoid bunks at all costs? Let us know below, and keep watching for more content to come soon. Buen camino.